Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is a long verse and an important verse, and of course an important section of Bhagavatam because it's Krishna speaking. Mostly Bhagavatam is speaking about Krishna. This is Krishna speaking. There are other sections where Krishna is speaking, but this is Krishna Tattva, and specifically this section is Abhideya, of the process of devotional service, acting in one's relationship with Krishna. I'd like to speak something that came from yesterday evening's class with the Chinese devotees. It was in relation to the story of Rukmini. And in the story of Rukmini, she confirms, her experience confirms what Krishna is saying here to Uddhava. What Krishna is saying to Uddhava is, just by hearing about me, your whole consciousness is cleansed and all auspiciousness awakens, and it's good for the whole world. So the discussion yesterday evening was 2 points. What's your, you can say, goal or higher purpose of life? And then second is, once that's identified, not just notionally, but at the heart level, your higher purpose of life, then align your hearing with that. And aligning your hearing with that is you select from the possibilities of things to hear those that align with your higher purpose. And the second is the point I want to emphasize this morning, and that is connect at the heart level, or the heart means for the purpose of achieving Krishna's association once again, as opposed to the information kind of hearing, that if we're attentive, we're trained in our modern education in information processing. And the Vedic process is not just information processing, it's transformation of consciousness. So please listen, not just for hearing something that's interesting and go, wow, that was interesting, and then you walk out the door and there's not significant transformation. We're looking for transformation. And that transformation comes by aligning your higher purpose with the process of hearing. So let's just say the higher purpose is restoring our relationship with Krishna in loving service, or some language like that. If that's the purpose, then hear with that purpose in mind. Now, a second point before we resume is, let's remember, what's the question? The big question, going back to chapter 6, and here we are in chapter 11, it's still responding to chapter 6. Please give me instructions whereby I can become free from undue attachment to the temporary, because it's an obstacle in knowing you and understanding you and being in my relationship with you. So like Arjuna is put into a predicament where he asks questions that's good for us, Uddhava is doing the same. Very, very relevant to us, whatever our situation is. If the higher purpose is as stated. Revive and be situated in our relationship with Krishna that's now forgotten, covered by Maya. And there's obstacles. That's our affinity for the temporary. and that you like a very weak bhakti muscle, and we have to exercise the bhakti muscle substantially because it's weak and slowly. So that was the starting question, and the most recent question. Let's do a little refresh on the most recent question. Because Krishna, this is review, abundantly has described knowledge of detachment. And then the fruit of that knowledge of detachment is overcoming the affinity for the temporary, detachment from the temporary, and seeing the temporary in relation to Krishna. And then Krishna opens another topic, the bhakti topic, because the fruit of that detachment is not just detachment. It's bhakti. It's removing the obstacle for bhakti because too much attachment. And so he starts describing, weaving back and forth between pure bhakti and mixed bhakti and pure bhakti and mixed bhakti, and what the mind does when it's pure bhakti, what the mind does when it's mixed bhakti. And if you're not in pure bhakti stage, we heard, a step in that direction is two things: hear topics about me, about Krishna, and be detached from the fruits of your work and offer the fruits of your work to Krishna, karma yoga, because that purifies the mind. Not just the knowledge, but karma yoga is above knowledge. So, purify the mind. And hear topics about me, because that will purify the mind also, but it will awaken attraction for Krishna. So, Uddhava asks, I'll read the verse. This is 26 and 27 of chapter 11. Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, two questions. What type of person do you consider to be a true devotee? And what type of devotional service is approved by great devotees as worthy of being offered to your Lordship?" Two questions. Who is the true devotee? And what do those true devotees consider to be worthy of being offered to you? My dear ruler of the universe, universal controllers, O Lord of Vaikuntha and Almighty God of the universe, I am your devotee, and because I love you, I have no other shelter than you, therefore please explain this to me. Like, it's not that he doesn't know. He knows. But when you hear even something that you already know, don't tune out, because it's meant to, refine and increase the impetus of connection and shelter, etc. Hearing again and again and again. Something that you don't know, it's information-oriented commonly. But in the mature stage, like Uddhava, and what this conversation is taking us, is we're in the sadhana bhakti stage, and how do we go from the sadhana to the more matured stage of bhakti? It's Abhideya again. That's this conversation. So that's the question. Now, where we began reading yesterday was Krishna's he's answering the first question, who's a true devotee? And these are 28, we heard, characteristics. We'll continue reading them. But what's the importance? What's the benefit for us, sadhakas, in hearing who is a true devotee? And why is Uddhava asking this question? What's the benefit for us? It helps us refine our understanding. That's the tattva, bhakti tattva purpose. It's knowledge of what is bhakti, what is true bhakti, true devotion. And the sound vibration itself stimulates true devotion. So our hearing, back to the point from, our hearing should be in alignment with our higher purpose. So get your alignment apparatus going and hear with that purpose, with that kind of hearing, at the heart level. So there's one last point, and then I'm going to read. This list is similar to two other lists. What are the two other lists? In Bhagavad Gita 13, chapter 13, text 8 through 6, there is a list of what is knowledge. Because Arjuna asks, what's knowledge? And then the object of knowledge. So Krishna is the object, and knowledge is, you look at the list, and it's qualities. Now there's another list. We've been mentioning this a few times. Another list comes in Canto 7, chapter 11, spoken by Narada to Yudhisthira, and it's in response to a different question. It's how does one become qualified like Prahlad? How does one become a 100% pure devotee? And the answer is, by Narada, by proper following of our Varnashram, dedicating your duties to Krishna, which is what Krishna is saying to Uddhava in essence in the previous section. But before you can properly perform Varnashram duties, that is, your psychophysical nature, your Varna and Ashram duties dedicated to Krishna service, the fruit goes there. You have to be civilized. You have to be a civilized human. Aryan. A civilized human. A civilized human is one who knows the higher purpose of life. That's Prabhupada's definition. Similar to the same message of what's your higher purpose. The context was Krishna left the battlefield. Krishna ran from Jarasandha. And he went in the mountain, jumped off the mountain, and went to Dwarka. So why did he do that? He had a higher purpose. What was that higher purpose? It was time to marry Rukmini. She was waiting. She was in difficulty. So he went to Dwarka in a big hurry. He didn't bother smashing Jarasandha or his army as he did 17 previous. So he has a higher purpose. Now what's our higher purpose? And in any given moment there's an intermediate purpose, but that intermediate purpose should be aligned with higher purpose. We have to continually, reconfigure or realign ourselves with higher purpose. In each step, you practice it, it becomes how you live your life. Practice, practice, practice makes perfect. Don't practice and it won't happen. Practice, practice, practice. So now we're here. So in that's Canto 7, chapter 11, verses whatever it is, 7 through 12 or something like that. Something like that. So here's another list. And the lists are similar. You look at knowledge, or a civilized human being, or the characteristics of a devotee. And they're quite similar. There's some variations, which is fine. And we have a similar description in Chaitanya Charitamrita, 26 qualities. So there's actually 4 lists. Now the purpose is not just learn the list, and then when you have a Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhav exam, you can check the list and you get an A in your exam and you put it on your wall, and then you teach Bhakti Vaibhav or Bhakti Shastri. The information, attainment, mastery, purpose. That's not our purpose. The purpose is transformation. So let that understand what is it that I should become like. And we'll see we're not there, which is fine. But, it doesn't stop at, well, I'm not there. But you have a target. You have something to align yourself towards. And the purpose of that, to become a qualified devotee, is to please Krishna. That's the higher purpose. And all of this is in context with how the Bhagavatam is structured. The Bhagavatam is structured to achieve that higher purpose, to cleanse and awaken the misgivings, or the lower qualities that are resting upon involvement in the modes of nature and detaching ourselves from all of that, and detachment and attachment to Krishna. So let's hear with that purpose in mind. I'm going to read, well, it's a long verse. I'll read the long verse. (29 to 32). I'll just read the beginning part. My dear Uddhava, one can give up false pride, is that right? No. 29 through 32. There we go. Oh, Uddhava, a saintly person is merciful and never injures others. We read that purport yesterday. Even if others are aggressive, he is tolerant and forgiving toward all living entities. His strength and meaning of life come from the truth itself. He is free from all envy and jealousy, and his mind is equal in material happiness and distress. That sounds like a contradiction. How can you, if happiness and distress is a state of mind, and how can the mind be equal when there's, on this side there's this condition and that side there's that condition? It sounds contradictory. But it's an equal at the consciousness level, not at the mind level. So now let's go on with these different qualities. So we read the first two. Kripalu, a devotee cannot tolerate seeing the world merged in ignorance and suffering the whiplashes of Maya. Therefore, he busily engages in distributing Krishna consciousness and is called Kripalu, or merciful. That was number one. Number two, Akrita Droha. That's even if someone is offensive toward a devotee does not become offensive in return. Indeed, he never acts against the interest of any living entity, etc. That was number two. So now we're moving on. Number three, Tatikshu. A devotee forgives and forgets any offense against himself. A Vaishnava is personally detached from his material body, which is made of pus, blood, stool, and so on. Therefore, the devotee is able to overlook the obnoxious behavior he sometimes meets with in the course of preaching work, and always deals with people as a perfect gentleman. A Vaishnava loudly chants the holy name of the Lord and tolerates and forgives those fallen conditioned souls who are unable to reciprocate properly with a pure devotee. Tatikshu. That's three. It's a long list. We're heading for 28. 4. Satyasara. A devotee always remembers that he is the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is omniscient, the reservoir of all pleasure, and the ultimate enjoyer of all activities. By avoiding activities outside of devotional service, a devotee remains fixed in the truth, does not usually uselessly waste time, and thus becomes bold, powerful, and steady. Satyasara. Number 5. Anavadyatma. Anavadyatma. A devotee knows that the material world is a temporary phantasmagoria and therefore does not envy anyone. in any material situation. He never tries to agitate others or criticize them unnecessarily. Anavadhyatma. And 6, similar, sama. A devotee remains steady and equal in material happiness and distress, fame or infamy. His actual wealth is, here it is, this is how it's at the consciousness level. By Krishna consciousness, the mind may be going here, and you can detect the mind going here and the mind going there. But if consciousness is centered on Krishna, the mind is quickly stabilized. There's a nice example of this. Here's a nice example of this. Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat was really detached, for good reason. And the only time he spoke was triggered by his mind being agitated. And his mind was agitated because King Rahugana was insulting. Now, he had not only been insulted, he had been, his life was threatened on more than one occasion. He was treated really badly. But he didn't get triggered. But this is my understanding, at least. He saw in Rahugana higher quality. And this higher quality person was behaving like a lower quality person. And so his mind being troubled by that, he then calmed and spoke. It's described in that Rahugana and Jad Bharat interaction. So one who is an elevated person, their mind may become this or that, but it becomes quickly stabilized by Krishna consciousness. His actual wealth is his consciousness of Krishna, and he understands that his real self-interest lies outside the scope of material nature. He does not become excited or depressed by external events, but remains fixed in consciousness of the omnipotency of Lord Krishna. Sarvopakaraka. Neglecting one's selfish desires. So sarva upakar. Neglecting one's selfish desires and working for the satisfaction of others is called paropakara. Whereas causing trouble to others for one's personal gratification is parapakara. A devotee always works for the pleasure of Lord Krishna, who is the resting place of all living entities, and thus a devotee's activities are ultimately pleasing to everyone. Devotional service to Krishna, Lord Krishna, is the perfectional stage of welfare work, since Lord Krishna is the supreme controller of everyone's happiness and distress. Foolish persons, under the influence of false egotism, considering themselves to be the ultimate well-wishers of others, execute superficial materialistic activities rather than attending to the eternal happiness of others. Because a devotee remains pure and engages in missionary activities, he is indeed everyone's best friend. Now, this is, the feature of compassion, but compassion put into action. Just, there's a little detail that details are nice. What is compassion made up of? It arises from some concern for others. And it's those that are very concerned about compassion, analytically concerned about compassion. There's a cognitive part, there's a recognizing something. There's an affective part, something that you feel. And there's a motivational part, something that you do. 3 parts. So, sarva paropakara is, you see, you understand, and you do. And you do arising from you see and you understand that it's another dimension of compassion. Real compassion is you do with feeling. And it's bhakti. You do for Krishna. It's practical activity for Krishna. In the mood of, and with some feeling. So sometimes it's an interesting, another interesting detail. In scholarly translations of the word bhakti, often they say devotion. Devotion indicates a feeling. And Prabhupada uniquely translated it as consistently as devotional service. That's what you do. You do with devotion. Now, in our practical lives, we often do without feeling. We do mechanically. I mean, it's not a criticism, it's just a conditioning. It's a reality of our conditioning. And we do without any sense of, we just go back to this higher purpose. The higher purpose is not just doing. The higher purpose is, with some feeling, serving Krishna. And supposing there's an obstacle, we thank Krishna for some obstacle. And now, how to best serve Krishna given the obstacle? And then there's like 50 obstacles. And how to best serve Krishna given the 50 obstacles. But the higher purpose doesn't change, and the feeling doesn't change. And so one of the characteristics of a devotee is their interest is Krishna's parts and parcel, living entities. Sarva Paropakara. Or a phrase that Prabhupada often used instead of this one, but it says the same thing. What's the phrase? Sarve sukhino bhavantu. Sukha means happy. Everyone should be happy. And he would say it. It would sometimes say the Sanskrit, sometimes just say. But it was very clear. That was very clear. Listen carefully with your heart. Listen carefully to his classes. And you'll hear it in his voice. And you hear him summarize, people should be happy. What was driving him? People were unhappy. And he wanted, he's a true devotee. Or a true devotee has that concern. No, we're not the controllers of people's happiness. They're making choices, and based upon their choices and the consciousness that they're carrying as they make those choices, they're experiencing whatever they're experiencing. And due to past free will choices, sometimes it's happiness and sometimes it's distress, and so on. But it's, that wishing the welfare of others is directly connected to Krishna's desire, who wants the welfare of others. Now, we're not Krishna, but we can be tuned into Krishna's desire. What does Krishna want? Why does he come? Why does he speak Bhagavad Gita? Why is he inducing Uddhava to ask the questions that Uddhava is asking? So we can sit here, so many thousands of years later and discuss, because Krishna wants us. And now there are lots of people, not doing that. So that should be of some concern for a devotee. It is of some concern. Now, what do you do? And that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement is. We do in our homes, and we do in exchange, in contact with other living entities. Book distribution, Prasadam distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, public festivals, like Kirtan. I'm on a soapbox now, but permit me. It's nice to have kirtan in your home. It's nice to have kirtan before the deities, for the pleasure of the deities. It's nice to have sankirtan in public places. That's how the Hare Krishna movement, the Hare Krishna explosion happened. Take it from our founder Acharya. That's how it happened. I mean, history confirms what he said, that it was just the public chanting of the holy name. And look, here we are. I know there was other things, but that was the seed. Prabhupada had faith in it. Mission Impossible became not only possible, but became an explosion. So on this quality, Sarva Parupakar, that's a true devotee. So we're not there yet. We're not pure devotees. But we can practice, and we practice by assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sankirtan mission. And if you do with that purpose, not just like numbers, how many people came to the Sankirtan party, or how, the numbers aren't zero, but it's not the essence either, because it's pleasing. There's some wonderful stories, events in the beginning of the Hare Krishna. Of course, when Prabhupada went into Tompkins Square Park, it was a scene. But sometimes before that, they would arrange public programs. There's a nice story. Avery Fisher Hall is a place in New York City. Very expensive. The devotees didn't have money. They somehow got some money and got Avery Fisher Hall to reduce their price, and they booked a program for Prabhupada in Avery Fisher Hall. And they tried to advertise like anything, and something like a handful of people came. And they were really like embarrassed and apologized to Prabhupada like anything. And he said something so nice. He said, "Why are you thinking like this? Didn't you see? Narada Muni was there. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda were there because it was nice Sankirtan." So it was very wonderful. He was appreciating the effort of trying to, bring this bhakti message to the public, because they were already doing their kirtan together, and they were very happy, chant and be happy, but they wanted others to be happy. That's this. It's the nature of a devotee, and the opposite is also here. Parapakara, causing trouble to others for one's personal gratification. So foregoing one's own sensibilities of what's important to me and my enjoyment level and so forth, and sacrificing. Prabhupada's a perfect example how much he sacrificed for unknown people. He didn't know it all. It wasn't just like family members or people from his country. He wanted to come to America to give the opportunity for non-resident Indians to live in America to have a place of worship. That wasn't why he came. He had people they just didn't know. Anybody and everybody. Anybody and everybody. I was just listening to Hari Sori explain how Prabhupada responded to GBC resolutions and how he acted in such a way that he was teaching by example. But it's a detail, but it's part of the Sarva Parupakara. There apparently in 1978, just as the year that Prabhupada had formed, or 79. Is that right? No, before then. 75. Anyway, whatever the year was. Prabhupada was in the room. He would attend GBC meetings sometimes, and sometimes he would, see how everyone was voting and raise his hand by showing by example. This, it's majority rule, which is different. He's the Acharya. He doesn't need the majority rule or model. but he was showing by example. So sometimes he wouldn't attend, and then they would bring the resolutions that the GBC had made, and for Prabhupada to review. And this description, Hari Sori is describing, one of them was to further book distribution. There was a GBC policy that women that are not married cannot live in temples, which means there were examples of married men and women living in temples, but unmarried women can't live in temples. And the purpose of it was to foster increased book distribution, because brahmacharis were, at least at that period of time, the main source of book distribution. Actually, women were doing many, many, many times better than men sometimes. But anyway, so they read this resolution, and Prabhupada was quiet. And they understood he didn't like it. And so there was a long pause, and Satsrup Maharaj said, it seems you don't approve this, Prabhupada, so we'll scratch it out. And then Prabhupada spoke and said, this sarva parupakara. I just want that everyone should be happy. And that everyone should be happy. He was recognizing that in India was different, but in the West it's different. And in the West there's a mixing, and ladies should be encouraged and do to their capacity, because he wanted them to be engaged in Krishna service. It's not just book distribution service, it's his service, whatever service. So then they understood why Prabhupada was not happy. And they understood what the mood, the mission of our founder Acharya. Now, it's not easy to adjust things so that everyone has maximum opportunity to serve, because you have to have some boundaries and standards and so forth. But that's the higher purpose message. I'll just read one more, and then we'll stop for this morning. Number 8. Kamaya ahata dhi. Kamaya ahata dhi. Ordinary persons see all material things as object for their personal gratification, and thus try to acquire or control them. Ultimately, a man wants to possess a woman and enjoy sex gratification with her. The Supreme Lord supplies the desired fuel that causes the fire of lust to burn painfully in one's heart. But the Lord does not give self-realization to such a misguided person. Lord Krishna is transcendental and neutral, but if one is eager to exploit the Lord's creation, the Lord gives one facility through Maya, and one becomes cheated of real happiness by entangling himself in the false role of a great and lusty enjoyer of the material world. On the other hand, one who has taken full shelter of Krishna is enriched with perfect knowledge and bliss, and is not cheated by the seductive appearances of the material world. A pure devotee does not follow the path of the foolish deer, which is seduced by the hunter's horn and killed. A devotee is never attracted by sensuous entreaties of a beautiful woman, and he avoids hearing from bewildered karmis about so-called glories of material acquisition. Similarly, a pure devotee is not bewildered by aroma or taste. He does not become attached to sumptuous eating, nor does he spend the whole day making arrangements for bodily comfort. The only actual enjoyers of God's creation is the Lord himself, and the living entities are secondary enjoyers who experience unlimited pleasure through the Lord's pleasure. This perfect process of experiencing pleasure is called bhakti yoga, or pure devotional service, and a devotee never sacrifices his auspicious position of steady intelligence, even in the face of so-called material opportunity. So let's go to the artwork. We read this first one. We appreciate the artwork. He is tolerant and forgiving toward all living entities. His strength and meaning of life come from the truth itself, and he is free from all envy and jealousy, and his mind is equal in material happiness and distress. We saw this one also. His intelligence is never bewildered by material desires, and he has controlled his senses. Let's go through a few more. A saintly person is thoughtful and accepts me as his only shelter. Now here's Prahlad. He is expert in serving and reviving the Krishna consciousness of others, and therefore never cheats anyone. Rather, he is a well-wishing friend to all, being most merciful. Here's another nice graphic, and it'll end with this one. Oh, this is it for the section. Having taken complete shelter at my lotus feet, however, a saintly person ultimately renounces such ordinary religious duties and worships me alone. He is thus considered to be the best among all living entities. So I'm going to pause, use the restroom for a moment, and come right back. Okay, any discussion? You're going to run the microphone? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I know that the highest purpose of life is to please Krishna. So which will please Krishna more? Is it chanting about Krishna, or is it reading and hearing about Krishna, or is it talking about Krishna, or the book distribution?
Prabhupada was asked this question in Atlanta in the presence of the book distribution party of the Radha Damodar buses. At the end of class, someone asked this question: what will please you the most? Which means what will please Krishna the most? And they expected him to say book distribution, because it was a book distribution party. And there was nearly 100 of them very enthusiastic, self-sacrificing, dedicated book distributors. That wasn't the answer. He just said, by becoming Krishna conscious, that is most pleasing to me. So it's not a particular activity, but it's the consciousness behind the activity that's pleasing to Krishna. Make your offering this way, that way, the other way, or combination. Be Krishna conscious. And what does that mean? And you know what so Krishna conscious means. We're finding out what it means. Okay?
Okay.
Next.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, Krishna. Next question.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I think one quality that we should forgive about our mistakes, or sometimes we forgive, but it is hard to forget about it. So, is it okay, or is something that I'm holding still?
Is it okay if what?
If I'm not able to forget about it.
Well, it's okay. You're not going to be put in a penalty box or spanked or something. It's there's the acceptance of the mind's condition, holding on to something that's of its illusory nature. So it's okay, and then accepting that that's my situation. Let me carry on with my devotional service, and may Krishna be kind and take that attachment to the hurt or the feeling or something, the negative emotion, and take it away. It's further progress in spiritual life, and that the unable to let go will fade. Okay? Sure. You lost your service.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. The strength and peace comes from the truth. So, the past interactions while chanting with others, this time they're explicitly saying also, I'm robbed of peace.
You robbed of peace?
Yeah, that's what they are saying.
Who's they saying?
I mean, people who chanted.
People who are chanting are saying what?
In the public festivals.
What are they saying?
I don't have peace.
They don't have peace.
This, that, and other.
Yeah, okay.
So, like when it's being repeated, I was thinking, what came to my mind is like Tushanticha, Ramanticha. So, they're saying it is peace, but they're looking for happiness. So, if somehow or other they are provided with the association and they are in touch with the absolute truth, but it also takes some a kind of a sangha for them to come into and practice. So, suggestions, Guru Maharaj, on that.
What was the concluding?
How can I be the...
How can you do what?
The instrument.
You're trying. That's how you can do. Become Krishna conscious and you'll become a better instrument. Next.
Guru Maharaj, the service has to
be done with feelings. That's what you're saying. And sometimes I do have feelings, but is it okay that sometimes I can't express, feeling that my feelings are nothing.
Your feelings are nothing.
Nothing. So to express, I feel somewhat it's not proper. So, but having that internal feelings and serving is also okay. But even though if at all we won't be able to express it.
Well, it sounds like you're expressing a feeling right now. And it's not that there's some, like a river flows and, whatever your feelings are, you're supposed to express whatever your feelings are. You'll be a babbling brook. It won't stop. So there has to be some discrimination. What's appropriate, time, place, circumstance. So it's not a regular principle that you're supposed to express your feelings. There should be persons, ultimately Krishna, with whom you share your feelings. But there's the intelligence also that directs those feelings towards a place of higher consciousness, towards a place that's meaningful for pleasing Krishna. Even when, whatever the feelings are, the good, bad, and mixed, or pleasant, unpleasant, or surprised, or whatever, direct them towards Krishna. That's our teaching. That's rasa. There's all the varieties of emotion or feeling, and it's somehow stimulating our attraction for Krishna. So learn that art. Learn that art. Behind you.
Guru Maharaj, one appreciation and then one question. I was really inspired to hear how you expressed that, how Prabhupada came and he was...
How is what?
Prabhupada, when he came to West, he was benefiting everyone. He doesn't know anyone. That's such an elevated... just like Krishna is equal to everyone, benefiting everyone. So
he left his family. Yeah. He left the Vrindavan. He left everything. For what? I mean, there was a mission, but the recipients of that mission was people he didn't even know at all.
Really,
it's very heart touching.
Yeah,
and it wasn't just once upon a time. It was always like that. Tirelessly. Depriving himself of whatever. For that purpose. It's pretty amazing. Okay.
And so we are so fortunate to receive such mercy, and but on the point of aligning our hearing with the higher purpose of life, goal of life.
Yeah.
Often even devotional service becoming so mechanical.
Yes.
Get up, chant, and then go to work, and then do etc.
Yeah, that's okay.
So the alignment, the thought of aligning and why I'm doing that thing, how does it actually come to the
by hearing an application, by sadhu sangha. That's how it happens. And then you unpack sadhu sangha, and that's how it happens. And application, because that's part of sadhu sangha. You do with sadhus what sadhus do. That's bhajana kriya. That's that flows from sadhu sangha. And you do that for the purpose of pleasing those sadhus, serving and pleasing. In a mood of service to them, you do. The obstacle is the mind, and and our dear friend false ego, and the tendency is to try to be the doer, and we just lapse into mechanical. That's the default mode. So then we recognize that here I am again. So then you pick yourself up however many times. But the principle is sadhu sangha and bhajana kriya. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Up front. Right here.
Guru Maharaj, we have been hearing about the conditioned soul and the attachment to matter and enjoying matter, things like that, and gradually leading to the platform of pure devotional service. My question is, we're basically seeking clarification on how to understand. We see Krishna bestowing material opulences to certain personalities like Sudama, and we also see Pandavas. They are in a very opulent material position. So what is at play here? Is it the consciousness of those individuals that they do not get entangled into
Yes.
that material?
Yes. Here's some nice teaching, and it's in the commentary about Sudama. But are the acharyas right? And this may even be Prabhupada, but I can't remember which acharya. There are two types of renunciation. Those that loathe objects of the senses, involving oneself in objects of the senses, and those that are undisturbed by the objects of the senses. And Sudama was in the former category. He just had repulsion. And distinct is these other persons that had great opulence. Now, they had, in having great opulence, they weren't attracted to it. The Maharaj Ambarish, for example, or Maharaj Yudhisthira, for example, or the Pandavas. Great opulence. Later, Prahlad, great opulence. But, his words were, I don't want anything. Great opulence. But undisturbed by it. Now, later, Krishna gave Sudama great opulence, but he remained undisturbed by it. He continued to live in complete simplicity. Although there was a palace, he was sleeping on the floor and living a life of simplicity because that was his happiness. No, he could have, gone into the external, but would still remained undisturbed. But he just had a liking of not wanting opulence around him, not for fear of becoming caught by Maya. So Krishna reciprocates with the hearts of his devotees. And sometimes he takes away, and sometimes he gives. But it's the relationship between the devotee and Krishna that's operating. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I think when you were explaining Prabhupada's compassion for women serving at the temple, I'm still remembering there was no temple where I saw in other sampradayas where women used to do the priest services. But I think when Prabhupada gave that blessings without the discrimination on any of them, that was really, this is like in ISKCON only I saw a woman serving at the temple at the priest level. So that was really a appreciation for Prabhupada's looking at the soul level and giving the services.
Yeah, he was able to adjust without violating principle, adjusting detail in an appropriate manner, and it was from at least from one culture to another culture different. The culture in India did not match the culture in the West, and vice versa. But the principle didn't change. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We got one online question. I forgot. One online question before we disperse.
This is from Sucharita Mataji. She says, forgiveness is important also because it affects the offended if they aren't unable to forgive. Are the negative feelings leaving more stronger impressions on the soul?
Are negative impressions leaving stronger impressions in the soul? That's the question?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not exactly a stronger impression. It's just reinforcing what's already there. I guess you could say that's stronger, but the time is expanding by dwelling on, the negative feeling connected with the temporary. The unhappiness. It doesn't have to be between one person and another person. Any kind of negative feeling about whether it's too hot or it's too cold, and having a negative feeling. Then you can get mad at Indra, or mad at Surya, or the Devas, etc. Mad at Krishna. It just makes it. It sustains involvement in the material energy by dwelling. Yes, the person who's not forgiving is the one who's being harmed, not the one who's the offender or the wrongdoer that's causing that feeling that one is unable to forgive. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.